Hi everybody, Merry Christmas and all of the good stuff that goes along with it. I know this Vlogmas that, is supposed to be centered around Christmas has been centered around a whole lot of things, and mostly it's just me recapping my everyday because sometimes I'm up and sometimes I'm down, and regulating your emotions when you have ADHD, autism, hypersensitivity, or if you have chronic PTSD or any kind of PTSD or almost anything, even physical illness can be hard to regulate so that you can lead a normal life. It's difficult, and it doesn't stop during the holidays. The holidays probably intensify it. So that's what we're going to talk about today. How we're going to start with this is recapping my week just a little bit. And as you know, I am my best science project. So about 4 days ago, I think it was, we had went to the grocery store. And when we went to the grocery store, you know how Christmas is, there was a lot of people there. There was a lot to be done. I was like overthinking everything because I wanted to make sure I got everything I needed. And it was like really a hard day. And there was so much going on that I just was really having a terrible time focusing. And by the time we got home, the whole family was exhausted. Of course, Joe, he's always got more energy and he always feels better, but because we had got up and left early, he wanted his computer time, so he just went straight to his computer and started doing what he always does. And Joe is an inspiration to me because he is so self-contained and will take care of himself if he can at all. In so much that I have to really stay on my toes, that I'm looking after him, checking in on him, making sure that all of his needs are met, that he's not having any problem. He's a little better about coming to me and telling me if he has an issue, but it takes a lot of monitoring just to say, I don't know how many times through the day I'll stop in his room or wherever he's at, and I'll say, how are you doing? Are you upset about anything? Do you have any pain? Are you feeling okay? Are you hungry? Because he just won't vocalize his needs. And that's often true with people that have a flavor of autism. Flavor's probably not the best word, but his type of autism. But anyway, he went straight to his computer, and me and Jamie just, went our ways and took a nap because we were exhausted. All we did was just throw the cold stuff in the refrigerator and freezer. From that, I had like 2 or 3 days of just kind of going down because I was so tired. I was having a hard time managing all the work, and if all the work doesn't get done, and then I was doing videos on top of that, and my emotions got awry, and when I get tired and behind in my work and I'm already upset, then it's really easy to open up old scars and things that, I'm still dealing with on a daily basis. So I just kind of, took a tumble down the hill. It is so important when you have issues like I have, and if you're watching this channel, I'm assuming you have some of these issues too, to monitor yourself. Always, if you have to, keep a journal, but always monitor how you're doing, because it's really easy if you're not monitoring your emotions for something to come up and then you just kind of like melt down, lose it, go, say something you shouldn't say, or have an attitude you shouldn't have, or just, crying that won't stop, go to bed, whatever. It can be, really crazy. For the most part, I have worked on this long enough that I have coping mechanisms, tools, a lot of things that I keep at my disposal to keep myself under management. And when I was really, really bad, especially when I was generally, seriously, mentally unstable because of the brain swelling, brain has tendency to just shut down everything. It's like you just fall into this dark hole. You're unaware of most of what's going on around you. You could be causing other people pain and suffering and not being able to realize it. You could be causing yourself pain and suffering and not realize it. So anyway, but it is so important for you to monitor yourself. And if you can at all, be educating yourself on what maladies you have, whether physical or mental. Be staying on top of your pharmacy prescribed medications. Pay close attention to yourself. And this is okay. It's okay to have self-care and self-love. So many of us, and I really, really had to work on this, we had difficulty providing self-care and self-love because for one reason or other we feel unworthy, or we have some self-hate going on. But it is really, really important to learn these skills. And having a good talk therapist is the most amazing thing in the world, and I'm going to keep plugging this because it's really, really helpful. AIPI, a free app, get it on your phone, will help you in so many ways. It's like a personal assistant genie in a bottle. Because sometimes I just have a thought, like, what's the law on when you're driving a car down the road and blah, 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 so it's also, he works, kind of like Google or whatever. He can tell you what you need to know. I had been going through this spiral. Not anything terrible. I wasn't disturbing the peace in any way or anything like that, but I was just suffering, and mostly internally. And sometimes if you're quiet about your suffering, people don't really know that you're suffering. There is a stigma that goes along with what people consider to be mental illness. Well, no, you're not crazy. You just got tread marks from this world. This world is rough to get through. And there's so many emotions that can flood you. There's so many different issues that you can have that just pile on top of each other. Because sometimes it's really hard for me to say, okay, am I feeling this way because of my autism, my ADHD, my PTSD, is it because of my agoraphobia? Is it because I have anxiety with phobias? Is it because, it's just like on and on and on, because things just layer up. And once you have one issue, like if you're born with autism, it can just layer. It's like it's just sticky paper. These different issues can just go on and on. So it's really, really important for you to monitor yourself and try as best as you can to have self-love and self-care, because other people, especially if you're quiet or nonverbal, other people cannot tell what you've got going on, especially if you are really good at masking. Okay, see, these are some of the things that get you. You're really good at masking and pretending that you're just fine. You're super, super smart, and most of us are, in one form or another, really, really smart. So they think, oh, that person's just really smart. They don't have any issues. If you're very introverted and you have issues with sharing your problems or with other people, or if you're living in an environment that's not conducive to sharing your problems because, the prey gets hunted. And if you are in an environment where people can take advantage of your weaknesses, they will. And there has been times in my life, because I was very naive, untaught, couldn't speak my mind. I have had abuses go on in my life that I never told anybody, ever. Not my parents, not my siblings, not anybody. Because honestly, it's it's fright, it's panic. I have had abuses go on to in my life that I never even, it was like selective thinking or buried thoughts of, I didn't even think of it until years later, and I'm like, oh my gosh, where'd this memory come from? But we can have so many things that go against us that keep us or inhibit us from sharing our problems with others. And sometimes it's not wise to do so. But I am a very out there person. I have sorted through this enough that I've made my decision to be very vulnerable and very open about many, I would say not all, but many of the things I've went through in my life, because there are people like me everywhere that are suffering. They have scars, they have hurts, they're trying to cope, and many of them are also bringing hardship on their families. They're bringing some of these issues into the lives of their children because, they don't know what's going on. There are so many people that just get stuck into a mental facility for a week at a time or whatever, and many others that commit suicide. This is why I do it. If I can't undo any of the wrongs I've done in my life, I can be a comfort. I can educate. I can help other people. And with the life that I've got under my belt and the experiences that I've got under my belt, it's almost a superpower. So yay me. Going back, I was in this kind of a spiraling down, and you can almost tell it. Like, if I make a video and I'm in a bad way, I'm like, and I just look a wreck. And I realize if you look back over my video, I can go from looking peachy and young and feeling great, to being like, oh, I'm dying. I started pulling out of it because I will never give up and I will never surrender. I started pulling out of it, and then my mind started working, and I was making sure I was getting plenty of rest. I was staying hydrated. I was making sure that I was taking care of my job and taking care of Jamie and Joe, and the house is probably suffered a little bit, but I managed to stay on top of things. But then, my mind started working, and I started thinking, okay, I need more coping skills to deal with this kind of fracture when it hits me. And so the first thing that I thought about was I plan shopping trips that are way too hard. I like to go to the store once a week, and sometimes that's a disadvantage because the list is so long. And especially if we're going on, because I get paid generally on Thursday or Friday night, so I'm going to the store either Friday or Saturday. And it's like there's a lot of people there, and the traffic is really bad, and it's just too much. And I've noticed that there's a certain spot in the grocery store, about the freezer section, I'm done. And I start in the dairy, and I know different stores are laid out differently, but I start in the dairy and I work my way around and I go through all of my, my steps. And then when I get to about the freezer section, it's like everything just goes. And I'm done. I'm not finished, but I'm done. And I can't really think about what I need. I stop adding things up on my list because I like to add things up so I know pretty much exactly what I'm spending. And then I start thinking, okay, what do I know that I've got to have? So I end up really sliding the freezer section and also the fresh fruits and vegetables. And I am a person that I just love my fresh fruits and vegetables. And I have went weeks and weeks without having salad. And I adore my salads, but I have went weeks and weeks without having a decent salad because by the time I get to that point, I'm just done. I feel like, the next step's going to be my last one. My first thought was I'm going to start planning my shopping in an entirely different way. And I'm going to do that, and I may do a video on it and touch on it. I started thinking about my handy dandy phone that we all have attached to our brain all day long. And I hate myself when I'm just like this. And you look at the clock and it's 11. And you look at the clock again and it's 1. And you're like, oh my God, I haven't got anything done. I haven't prepared for supper. I'm such a failure. So it just sends you into this death roll because you've been wasting so much time. And you look around, oh my gosh, my house is a mess and I didn't get the laundry done. And, wasting time really, really upsets me. And maybe it doesn't you, and you're lucky if it doesn't. But I started thinking about it. And I thought, well, I could monitor this a whole lot better. And so I uninstalled I only had like 2 or 3, but I uninstalled all my games off my phone. And I really set my mind that I am going to detox from my phone. Because there is good dopamine and there's bad dopamine. And I am pretty sure that a lot of the dopamine you get from your phone is not good dopamine. And of course, my phone is dear to my heart. It helps me work. It helps me communicate. It keeps me on top of things. I am never giving up my phone, so don't think that I'm going like crazy wazy. But separating it from myself for a periods of time is really good. So I'm just going to kind of what my first impressions are of detoxing from the phone. So I made this little box. And I hung it on my kitchen wall where I can have my phone in it and plug it into the wall. Then I thought about it the rest of the day, and I tried to stay off of it as much as I could yesterday. But I had plans that today was going to be the big test. I get up at 6 in the morning. So I gathered up my phone and my water bottle and put my house shoes on, and I'm usually walking around like the living dead, It's like shuffle, 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 shuffle. I went to the kitchen and I give the dogs a snack, and I try to get things settled, and make me a cup of coffee or whatever. But the first thing that I did was I stuck my phone in the box. When I got everybody settled, and I went to the couch and got my comfy little blanket, and I was sitting there, and I thought, this is going to be hard. I am going to have difficulty staying away from my phone, because what am I going to do when I sit down here, right? But anyway, so I sat down on the couch, and at that time I didn't have a notebook or anything, and I just sat there. And it was a little difficult for about 10 minutes. And then I thought, okay, so I've got to get my brain working. So I thought, what are my first memories of life? And my first memory of life that has come to me so far is standing in my crib, or being in my baby crib in my the downstairs back bedroom that was in my parents' home. And I think at that time that was my parents' bedroom. I know by the time I got like 4 or 5, it was, because I remember that. So that's my first memory. So that got me started just kind of scrolling in my head. And I was actually, once I started doing this, I was really quite shocked at how much substance and fiber there was in my memories. So I'm sitting there and I'm literally realizing that there is a screen in my head. Now, not everybody's like that. I'm a very visual person. I'm a very visual thinker. All of my memories are in visual form, picture form, moving, almost like a video. I have apart from certain aspects of my encephalitis that have not come back, because I still, on a rare occasion, have something pop up that was like, wow, I didn't even remember that. But I have a very vivid memory of things that people have said to me, experiences I've had. So, I mean, yeah, I got a memory like an elephant. Not when it comes to what I'm supposed to do today, short-term memory, but that long-term memory that I have is like very elaborate and textual. So I was sitting there and I was thinking and just letting my mind wander, and it was like scrolling YouTube in my head. And I had some pretty amazing things come to my mind, some of which I can't verify because there's no one I can like call or I mean I could, but there's no one I can really get a hold of to say, am I right about this memory? But I remembered the linoleum in my mom's beauty shop. And if there is anybody watching that happens to remember this, please do message me or something and verify. But I remember the linoleum in my mother's beauty shop being an olive green. I think back in that day, they called it avocado because, this was like in the 60s. And they called the color avocado, and it was like triangles, only they were like scalloped, right? So the print in it was like scalloped. And, I'm sitting there and I'm having all of these different memories come to my mind that are very random. But I'm getting the picture and the texture, and it's like I can almost hear my mom's coffee percolator making coffee. It's like I can almost smell, I can remember laying in the floor and I'd have my nose down in the floor and smelling the smell of the carpet. And speaking of the carpet, I remember it being gold and sculpted because the fibers weren't all the same length, and so there was like a texture in it that was sculptured and it was gold. And it came to my mind that I used to run up the steps upstairs, and if my foot went too far into the steps and actually kind of hit the back of, the crack, that sometimes my foot would hit a carpet tack of some sort, and it would kind of hurt. But, I would just scamper up. I do remember that I fell down those steps a lot. So they were covered with carpet. They probably weren't real wide. And I was young. I was probably always in a hurry or whatever. But I would start down those steps and miss that first step or two and just roll like a tumbleweed. In New Mexico, we have tumbleweeds. And I would just roll down the steps. I never told anybody, oh, I fell down the steps, boo-hoo-hoo. I don't remember ever telling anybody. I just would roll to the bottom, get to the landing, stand up, and go on. And I never told anybody. And I have spent my life not telling things and being very internal about everything. And I've went through things in my life that I've never told a soul. And that's kind of the way of late boomers and Gen Xers, suck it up, buttercup. So anyway, was going through all of these memories, and it was actually quite entertaining. And I couldn't believe it because for 2 hours, from 6 to 8, I'm sitting on the couch scrolling memories in my head, and they were random. They weren't like bad memories or necessarily good memories. Some of them gave me a chuckle. Some of them I was kind of in amazement at, but I thought of things that I might never have ever remembered again. I think I'm kind of addicted, and I'm going to do this again in the morning because I'm kind of excited to see what it is that I remember. Because one of the goals is not only to regulate my emotions, but also to get rid of my anhedonia, but it's the inability to feel emotions. So I'm not always like that, and it's definitely not my irregular emotions, but I'm talking about, get excited or feel joy over something, or feel happy, and it affects my ability to have nostalgic or enjoy music. Music has in my life, unless it's just very, very specific, it's almost become one of my worst nightmares. So say for instance, back in my day, my parents had a turntable, a record player, and they had a bunch of records that my mom had bought. And I remember, some of you won't remember this. If I could play a clip, I would, but it would be copyright. And there was this one record. It was Floyd Kramer, and he was playing the piano, and it was beautiful. And I think I loved that as a child. But if I hear it now, oh gosh, it just sends me into despair, because it makes me miss my parents and my childhood and my childhood home. But that's kind of minimal, because it reminds me of every bad thing that's ever happened since that time. So I have to be very, very careful about multiple genres of music that don't send me into some kind of flippin' whirlwind. And it's difficult for Jamie, because he's a real music connoisseur, and it's, he tries very hard to be respectful of my feelings. And he has created a playlist specifically for me, because he went through all of these songs so that he could have a playlist that works for me. And, all of these songs, they don't trigger memories. I pulled out my notebook. Now this is, and I've showed this before, this is I'm going to learn to make these better, but these are 4 composition notebooks that I have glued together, and I put a backing on them. I hot glued them together and I put a backing on them, and this just is like a big book. And I made it kind of in a sloppy way, but I did that on purpose, because I buy journals that are like, these beautiful journals, and then I don't want to write in them, and I feel like everything has to be perfect in them, and then I end up not using them because I don't want to mess them up and everything. So I made this one a little bit on a sloppy fashion so that I could just write whatever I wanted to in it. And because my eyes are so bad, especially it was handy this morning, I use a marker, because I can just write real big and I can see it, with my bad eyes. So, but I started writing down the random memories that I had and the things that I experienced, and to go on and kind of double up on this theory that I'm working on. I got a little bit sleepy because I'd been up since 6 o'clock, and I went back to the couch and I laid down a little bit, because I knew, when Jamie got up, then I was going to fix breakfast or whatever. So I thought, I'm just going to rest just a little bit, and I just took a quick nap. And when I woke up, I hadn't put my phone back in the box. So when I woke up, kind of unconsciously, I guess, and I started scrolling. Well, I don't know what it was. I don't know what triggered me. I don't know what hit me. One of my grief cycles hit me. And it hit me like a ton of bricks. And for the first 5 minutes, I'm like, it's like you're going through those death throes. It's the most horrid, depressing, painful, emotional state ever. And it can be so bad. I have never been suicidal. Never in my life have I ever been suicidal. And I'm not throwing off on you if you've struggled with that, because that's a real struggle for a lot of people. But I personally have never been suicidal. But I have had emotions that made me want to stop feeling. That made me, just want to just cross over and go to a world where there is no pain. And this morning was one of those times, but it was after I had scrolled for like 10 or 15 minutes that it just hit me like a hammer. And I'm not saying that the scrolling on my phone did it. I'm not saying it didn't do it, but I know I had been fine all morning. So that, I took note of that. Brain freeze. And then, I started thinking about that happens to me. I have like freeze moments. So, but then I started thinking about what I could do to come out of that, because this feeling, I'll tell you what it feels like. It's like my whole nervous system is shattered. So when a grief cycle hits me, it's like it starts up here and then it just works its way down, and it, you know, it's like super, super sad, super, super painful. It hurts all the way down, and when it gets to my heart, it's like a broken heart. And then as it just works down through my body, I feel like I have a framework, or like my vascular system is made out of crystal. And it just, I feel this sensation, and it goes down through my arms and through my legs and everything. And it's like my vascular system is made of crystal, and it just shatters as it goes down. And I feel it in my hands and my fingers, all over my body, this feeling of being shattered. And it was pretty bad. I mean, on a scale of 1 to 10, it was right up there with a 7 or 8 on my shatter meter. And if you're a person that you don't have any of these issues and you don't want to watch this video because you sounds like I'm complaining, I'm really not. I'm actually sharing my experiences so that other people that have issues like me in this very, very hyper and overstimulating world that we live in can figure out how to help themselves. And you may have people in your life that are acting very strange, and you're thinking, why can't they be normal, and what's going on with them, or contemplating, you know, locking them away or something. And I would or loading them up on medication. No, I would suggest that be the last resort. You do need to watch, you know, because sometimes people that commit suicide, they have hid it. And they've hid it very well. They're masking, they're pretending to be okay, and those are the ones that you really have to worry about, simply because, you know, they fully intend to follow through with their suicide, and they don't want you to know, and they're planning it all out, and they're masking and pretending everything is wonderful. Those are the ones that you have to worry about. This whole morning and what I went through, especially this morning when I was sitting on the couch and I was just, you know, in that deep thought. It was very entertaining. It was very comforting. And there was another thing that come to my mind too. I was thinking how being born in 1960 and having a connection with the really old ways of life, you know, and I lived in an area from 14 to 34 where they were just starting to get any kind of telephone. When I first was there was landlines, so you had like 6 or 8 neighbors on one line, or 3 or 4 on one line, and you'd pick it up and they'd be talking, and well, I can't use the phone now because somebody's talking, and you'd end up saying, you know, I really need to make this phone call. Could you please get off the phone? And sometimes they would, sometimes they would. You couldn't make them. But I remember the old days. I mean, I remember living where women still had 4-foot iron cauldrons in their front yard that they used for all sorts of things. I call them cauldrons. They were iron kettles, but they were like huge, like 4 foot wide. And they were on, you know, they were hanging like on a spit over a fire, and, you know, they were doing clothes on rub boards. And so I remember the old days. But you don't have to go back that far to remember people just sitting around, and they would be sitting on the porch or sitting in the living room, and they might have a cup of coffee or something, but they'd just be sitting there and they'd just be staring at the floor, or not talking, just sitting and staring. Now that would seem really, really strange to us now, although we can go into a restaurant and there's a couple sitting there, and you thinking, oh, they're in love, maybe they're married, maybe they're going to get married or whatever, and they're sitting there staring at their phones, just scrolling. Now that, it would be strange to the people way back then, but people would just be sitting and staring. It came to me this morning that what they were doing is they were scrolling in their head, their memories, their thoughts, their plans, what they were going to do that day, things, conversations they had had, because they had probably a very vivid image in their head. They had a screen in their head. But oftentimes, they would sit and they did this. I don't know if you can see it. This was called twiddling your thumbs. And this was the ancient, what was it called, those things that came out, the spinner, the fidget spinner. This was the ancient fidget spinner, and this was twiddling your thumbs. But they would sit and do that while they were staring out in space. Or they would, tap their fingers like this. Or they would do some other kind of, thing. Have you ever seen anybody sitting at a desk and they're working on a report or something, and they sit there and they're like, they're staring off at space, and they're just like, because they're thinking. And I thought, these people were sitting there and they were scrolling in their head, and they had these hand motions that was stimulating their brain somehow to help them to think. So I did that a little while this morning, and I don't know when I would have ever thought of that again. I mean, some of my older cousins is watching this. If you are, please comment below, because I know some of my relatives watch my YouTube videos. So if you're a relative and you're watching my YouTube video, quit trolling me and comment below and give me a like, okay? All of these things came to my mind this morning, and I was thinking of how they coped back in the day, how they thought and how they planned. It was really quite an amazing experience, and if you can at all, I suggest that you try this. Consider this a challenge. Sit without your phone, no TV, no music, no anything, maybe a notebook to write down something you don't want to forget, but just sit there and ponder. They used to use that word. I was sitting and pondering, or I'm going to sit down and have a think. These were phrases they actually used, and my experience this morning was amazing. And I think that possibly, because I was sharing this with Jamie, and I think that possibly because we have our phones now and we don't have to come up with something to think about, and a lot of the reels or anything, they're like 60 seconds long, or some of them even shorter. So our brain just stops working. And maybe some of these, neurons that we use for creative thinking or critical thinking have kind of broken down. Maybe it kind of deteriorates our nervous system, or as I like to say, our biological neural network, because really we have a computer up here, and all of the wires just run through all of our body and help us to feel pain in the end of our finger. But I want to challenge you to try this. No, I'm not suggesting we give up our phone. My phone is so much part of my life. It is a tool. But this is my experience, and you're going to say, well, what's this having to do with Christmas? Well, it has a lot to do with Christmas, because unless we're healthy, mentally stable, strong, Christmases don't mean much. And we can be going through a lot of drama and a lot of pain that maybe just a simple exercise like this might help. So I am making this video shorter and simpler because honestly, this is the 11th of December and I really need to get on with having some Christmas. I'm going to make the videos just a little simpler and a little shorter going through, and I might miss the odd day, especially I have a shopping day coming up. So if you do miss one, I will just add the vlog two together or something. But in all of my work and all of my play and all of my phone scrolling, real life still happens. So if you miss me, I'm still here. I'm doing much better. I'm feeling much more regulated. But you take some time to take care of you. you take some time to love yourself. Because I'm going to be really honest about it. When people have troubles of their own, maybe family members that have helped you and have taken care of you and watched over you for years and years and years, and now suddenly they have health issues, or they have grown children, or they're babysitting grandchildren, and it could go on and on and on. But ultimately, when it comes right down to it, it's you and you, baby. It's you and you that has to take care of you. Be happy, be strong, be courageous, and be healing. And never stop doing, never stop thinking, never stop learning, never stop doing. So I'm going to say bye for now. See you on the next video.